been a long time since I've done a little video like this. Don't think I've been goofing off and not sewing. I've been certainly sewing. You can see this is my newest shirt. It's a little bit ugly in the sheet because I wasn't sure it was going to work out, so I wasn't using my best sheets. I don't really fond of the buttons, and I didn't do any top stitching detail, but what you're looking at here is the fact that this shirt fits really, really well. And you might be wondering, well, how, Brian, did you get your shirt to fit so well? Well, that's what I've been working on. A fellow blog reader was, well, she knows who she is. Let's just say maybe she was getting tired of listening to me complain about the patterns that I've been sewing not fitting me the way that I liked. So she emailed me and she said, you know, have you ever tried pattern drafting software so you can make your own custom patterns? And I was like, I haven't considered that option. And so I looked into a few different manufacturers of this stuff and settled on Wild Ginger has a men's version. It's called Pattern Master Tailor Made, and it's for men. If you download it, it's $90, and they have a 90-day money-back guarantee. So I thought, well, 90 bucks, I can certainly give it a test run, and I will try it out and see what I can do with this stuff. And you know, if it doesn't work in 3 months, I can get my money back. So it's, you know, risk-free. And you know, the men's version is a lot cheaper than the women's version. I think the women's is, you know, $200 plus. So I learned an awful lot. Don't think that you can buy some pattern drafting software, punch in a few measurements, and out pops out a perfect pattern. That's not how this works at all. In fact, it doesn't work anywhere near like that. You do punch in some measurements, and out pops a pattern, and you sew it up, and you put it on, you're like, whoa, this is no good. It basically takes a lot of tweaking with the numbers. Tweaking, just because you're measuring, I have a very high waist, my waist is all the way up here. You know, a lot of times when you're drafting patterns, the waist is kind of a marker that you measure other measurements from. It's a place to start from. Well, when you have a very high waist, those measurements are not right. So you end up with you know, clothes that are just it doesn't work out quite the right way. So I had to adjust a lot of the measurements that I initially put in. Every time you make an adjustment, you know, you don't want to adjust too many things at once, because then you have no idea what adjustment did what, especially when you're first learning to use the software. You really don't know what you're doing. This is, of course, my first attempt at pattern drafting, you know, with software or manual. You know, I'm used to taking tissue and just cutting it apart and retaping it and cutting it and taping it, and you know, and basically in a lot of ways this ends up being the same thing. You print the pattern out on your home printer. I use glue sticks. I glue it all together, which, you know, I used to complain. I didn't used to complain. I used to kind of badmouth print at home patterns, because I was like, who wants to take the time to tape or glue together a pattern? That's ridiculous. Well, really, when you get used to it, it takes about 15 minutes to put the pattern together. And one of the advantages over modifying tissue and taping the tissue and whatnot is, first of all, you end up with much, you know, it's heavier paper because you're using printer paper. And second, every time you make a modification, you punch that into the computer, you can save it, so you have all your previous versions saved. So if it doesn't work, you can go back very easily to a previous version. Plus, you print it out and you get a brand new pattern to work with. So all the lines, all the corners, everything matches up. Like you know, when you start modifying tissue, you get 3 or 4 modifications in there, and things start getting a little wonky with the tissue. And you know, and you end up having to copy it over to something else, and with all the tape and stuff, and it doesn't work very well. So I want to show you. So this shirt is the result of many, and I'm going to count here. I haven't actually counted how many. That's what this pile of stuff here is. Many attempts to get the perfect dress shirt, at least in my vision, what the perfect dress shirt is. What I have here on the table, these are all the patterns that I printed. It is just an immense, like look at how many, this is a lot of patterns. I've gone through an entire ream of paper, which, gosh, you think, gosh, that's very expensive. No, it's not. A ream of paper costs $4.95. That's cheap. It uses a negligible amount of ink. Like when you look at one of these, you know, when you look at one of these pieces, I don't know if you can see it in the camera, there's very little ink on this page. I mean, printing out a full page of text would probably be much more ink than printing out 3 or 4 of these patterns. So for the people who say, oh gosh, it's wasting your resources or ink and whatnot, no, whatever. So this is how many. I'm just going to count how many of these I have. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and I'm wearing 24. And what I did was I started to write the version, I started making version numbers. So this is version 9.6. I started writing those on the actual shirt so I could keep track, because when you start getting close, you start making little minor tweaks that you're not sure, you need to kind of try it on the previous version and maybe the version before that to see how you're doing. You might end up going back a couple of versions because the tweaks weren't quite right. When you start doing this, the first time you get something that you put it on, you're like, okay, at least this fits. Like it's not pulling anywhere, and it doesn't feel wrong to be wearing it. You get really happy. You're like, okay, I'm really close. And then you start tweaking that, and what happens is that the closer you get to what you consider a perfect fit, the more picky you get about fit, and you start making little minor quarter-inch changes to things just because you're like, oh, there's a little wrinkle here, and I feel like it's pulling a little bit here, and maybe this could be a little bit different. And this is just talking about the measurements. Then you could actually, then you go into your, what they call it the style editor, and you can start making changes to the lengths of the cuffs, the lengths of the sleeve, the length of the shirt, the width of the placket. There's all these different, the collar shape. There's a lot of different aspects you can change about the actual style after you get the measurements right. Now the next test I'm going to do is working on how, will I be able to use the same measurements in the same chart, basically the same measurement chart, and translate it directly into a t-shirt. Or what about a jacket? How is that gonna work? The pattern drafting software was really, I'm really happy with it so far. This shirt is, I love the way, when you put on something that's fitted, and it goes on and it fits you, I don't want to say like a glove because it's such a cliche term, but that's what it feels like. You put it on and you can almost tell when you get half of it on, you're like, oh, this is going to be good. Like you can just, when I stand here, the only place I feel this shirt is just right across the top of the shoulder. However, it's fitted everywhere else. There's no extra wrinkling around the armholes. There's not a lot of extra fabric here. In the back, it's smooth across the back for the most part. Something else that I noticed is that you end up taking photos of yourself, from the neck to the torso, and you have these headless photos. And I realized how asymmetric my body really is. Which everyone probably is, but one side is much smaller and more compact than the other side. And when you're making, the software, as far as I can tell, doesn't have any, accommodations for asymmetry. So you end up having to fit, you have to compromise. You have to decide, well, which side of my body is this going to fit perfect, and which side is it going to be probably better to be a little bit big than a little bit small on. So that's kind of what I've been doing, and I've been so obsessed with it. I mean, you see 24 muslins, this is still a muslin because I wasn't sure it was going to work out. 24 of these things. This is the first one. I only did 2 with collar and cuffs and whatnot. Most of them are just, the front, the back, and the sleeves. So yeah, I'll probably have more to talk about with this software, but for right now, that's it. I'm not going to get into critiquing it. There's a few little issues that I want to ask the Wild Ginger people about before I, let them go public and talk about those, because I'm new enough to the software where I may be wrong about the way I'm looking at something, but there's a few little issues that would like to have addressed. So thanks for watching. That's what I've been doing, obsessed with. And thank you, Anne, for pointing out that I should be using pattern drafting software. Have a great day.